morning we are in Mississauga. Beautiful day here on the lake shore. And I am with Amanda Shotton.
Hi.
Amanda is getting right to work. And while she's working, I'd like to hear about her origin story.
Oh, sounds good. So I'm a self-taught artist. I originally went to school for advertising, but I ended up switching careers and I went into computer animation. And a passion of mine is always to create, to be hands-on, which you don't get to do on the computer every day. So what I love to do in my in the time that I'm not working is I love to paint, and mostly it's landscapes. I'm a huge runner and cyclist, and I have 3 boys. So I'm always taking them to beautiful parks like this, Jack Darlin Park. And I'm always stopping, I'm taking photos, taking lots of references. I go home at night, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to paint this. And it's become a big passion. I just started recently, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, actually entering in art shows and showing and selling my artwork. And I just love it. Like, you grow and you learn so much through showing your work and discussing with other artists and joining art groups. Yeah. And acrylic paint is my medium of choice because it dries quick. And I have 3 kids, so that's a big, a big plus. Oh, there's a little bee on my painting. I don't want to shoo him away. Look, he's like a baby. Aw, he likes it. That's funny.
Have you been here in Mississauga very long?
For about almost 13 years now. I just love it. There's so many parks. I love the waterfront trails. There's a lot to do. Tons of community centers, activities for the kids. And I love how multicultural it is as well. Originally, I was born in England, and I moved to Canada when I was about 2 years old. So it's really nice being in a big community where you feel everybody has come from somewhere. And we all have stories to tell, and yeah. But there's lots of festivals here, lots of exciting things to do. And living by the water too, it's beautiful. It's so nice.
So water, is that your favorite thing?
Oh yes, definitely. Water, trees, nature. Just last year with the pandemic and stay-at-homes, I decided that I wanted to work more on people and portraits. But what I would do is I would incorporate people into my landscapes. Yeah, and then that way it kind of tells the story more, kind of draws people in. They start thinking, what is that person thinking, or how are they feeling? Yeah.
So have you ever thought about if there's a deeper reason why you're compelled to create artwork?
Yes, there definitely is. I've always loved it since I was a kid, but it wasn't until about 8 years ago that I really immersed myself into it a lot more, and I realized how therapeutic artwork is and creating it. Doing something that's hands-on, you lose track of time, you get right into like what colors next, like look at the palette, look at texture. I was hit by a car, me and my kids, about 8 years ago, and it was very traumatic for us. We spent months in hospital. So when we did get out, one thing I realized is that I just needed to be outside a lot. I wanted to see the sunrise and the sunset. I wanted to see the trees. Like, I found nature very soothing and healing for me. Same as when you create something with your hands and and you're creating artwork. It's a beautiful thing to do, and there's so many benefits to it, right? You get some happy hormones. You release some energy. Yeah, and then afterwards, the next day you wake up, you're like, oh, I can't believe I made this. I can't believe.
Yeah.
But it was something that took my mind off the trauma. And also, I would do an art journal as well, and I would draw out, like, I had PTSD, so I would draw out images of what happened from the accident and go over it with my therapist and stuff like that. So artwork is good no matter what, right? No matter if you're trying to sell paintings, if you're doing it just for yourself, if you're, just day to day. And I always say, like, an artist's piece of artwork is never done. Like, there's always something you could add to it. And I love it because I'm always learning and I'm always challenging myself. you continue to grow all the time. So when you look back at a piece of artwork you did about a year ago, it's completely different than how you would do it now. Or maybe you have a new technique that you do or something that would just really make it. Yes. So some tips and ideas that I have for new artists is always stand back from your artwork, see it from a distance, because I always find out we're up close and you don't realize how it reads further back. And I even take pictures with my iPhone, so you see it on a smaller screen. And on my iPhone, it's so easy with any phone really to change your pictures to black and white. And when you do that, you can see what really pops, what resonates. Because sometimes maybe a piece of artwork is really overall too dark, or your eye's not drawn to one thing. But when you change it to black and white, you can see what is standing out, what is too dark, what do you have to work on some more. Yeah. And I would say if you really want to get into the art field as well, it's a lot about contacts and who you know. So try to join some local communities, ask them for tips and advice. I've learned so much from them. And when I started doing art shows, every time I spoke to a different artist, I would get a new tip from them. Like, oh, how do you accept payments? Or how do you go about this? Or how do you display your artwork? Where did you get your displays from? Stuff like that.
So a new topic that I brought up for this season is talking about trends. And it seems to be something that gets talked about a lot on social media, artists following trends. What are your thoughts on that?
You know what? I even try to do Inktober, and I probably just go through like the first 5, and then, which is, I don't know, I think if people all had the same theme or something to work on, it could be really fun, but at the same point, you're not creating your own style unless you're doing it in your own way, right? If you just have, okay, here's one word, do it this way, or I don't know. I would find it very hard to do something that I don't love. So for me, it's like, man, I love being outside. I love the water. I love the trees. I like seeing people interact in nature. So, and that's why I'm starting to incorporate people more into my paintings as well. So then it tells more of a story. But I don't know, trends, I think you'd have to be in the right mood, I guess. Yeah. But in the ways of like selling your artwork, I think more people are trying to reach out to wearable art or something like that, where it's like maybe they'll get their artwork on T-shirts, or maybe like for me, for instance, I do greeting cards. So unfortunately, due to COVID last year, most of our art shows were canceled, which really sucked. So a way that I made up with sales is I made greeting cards because people were starting to do handwritten letters again, or they wanted to send something like, oh, I'm thinking of you, blah, blah, blah. And I'll just make them blank inside, but I'll have a picture of my artwork on the front, and I have my name on my website on the back. And that actually did really well. People loved the cards. And I was like, you just make like a 5x7 and people can frame them and can do what they like with them. And that went really well. It would be nice to obviously do shows once everything opens up, but I don't think that's going to be until the fall for a lot of us artists. So we're just going to have to wait and see. But I've seen lots of artists like maybe trying to create pillows or trying to have T-shirts or something, right? They create all this beautiful artwork, but they're like, nobody really wants to spend the money on fine art unless, they're collectors or unless. And I find even at art shows, to give you a good reputation, like it's very good for getting out there and looking professional, getting your website, how people can come up and talk to you. But sales-wise, I make my sales on Instagram and Facebook mostly. So people see a piece, they comment, they're like, oh, how much is this? Like, I really like this. And then they'll private message me. Yeah, and that's how all my sales have been this year. Yeah, and commissions too, which is really nice. And it's about feel too. I find people would buy things a lot more if it gets to their emotions, right? I listened to the Chew stream a lot. It's a YouTube channel with Bobby Chew, and he was discussing what artwork sells. He's like, well, if you have scary paintings, how many people are going to buy that? Or how many people, because where would you hang that piece? Can you picture somebody hanging this piece in their bathroom or in their bedroom? Or what about? So that's always something to think of too if you're looking just for sales, right? But obviously, everybody has their own uniqueness and their own their own style, and there's always markets for it, but it's hard finding the right market sometimes. For me, I paint what I love, which is being outside in the areas that I enjoy going to. But for everybody else, it's different, right?
Yeah, you have to paint what you love. Because when you're doing something that you love, you're going to put your full self into it.
Yeah.
So I know we talked a little bit about the pandemic and how it's kind of put a pause button on some of the activities that we do as artists.
Definitely.
What have you been able to do to, I guess, pivot is the catchphrase of the day?
Well, I decided, you know what, there were no shows, so it was a bit discouraging to do big pieces on canvas, right? Because my house is already packed with artwork. But so I would just get one of those canvas books, and I decided, you know what, I want to get better at painting people. So I started to study like how do people do it, what colors do they use, and I would just try to do a person a day, or trying to get like a body type or a silhouette, or so I was trying to focus on how can I improve as an artist, or what can I work on that I've always had trouble before. I never used to be able to paint water. I thought that would be so intimidating and scary, and now it's one of my favorite things because you just keep doing it and it's practice, right? And I also started to do some more digital art as well, but I'm taking some online courses through Schoolism. And it's great because I hated painting digitally, so I'm trying to get some tips and tricks that way. And I find sometimes when you switch mediums, it makes you a better artist in the end because you're going back and forth. It's like, oh yeah, wait, I can do this in Photoshop. Wait, I can do this in real life too, or I could do this hands on. Maybe instead of a filter, I look at it this way, or just take a picture and then I see the difference and change values and see what works better.
So looking back over your career,
Yeah.
what would you say has been your proudest moment so far?
Oh, my proudest moment. That's a good one. I think it was at the time Brian Crombie was the president of the Mississauga Arts Council, and I was at Art in the Park doing a show that year, and it was my first time at Art in the Park. And he discovered my artwork, and he's like, "Oh, Amanda!" And he was telling me about the Arts Council, and he got me in. And then he even nominated me as a new emerging artist for Mississauga, and I was a finalist that year. And I thought, wow, this is so cool. I started showing my artwork, and it's starting to get recognition, and people are noticing, and it was just really, really nice. And that's something like I grew up in a small town. That stuff would just never happen, right? So in Mississauga, I find that there's a lot of opportunities that way to show your work. And the Mississauga Arts Council does have lots of events and different things going on that hopefully will come back next year.
What a great way to boost an artist.
Yeah, it was just really nice. And the comments and compliments you get from people, like the guy who saw me earlier at the park, and the look on his face when he saw the piece down there, and he's like, oh, and I was like, oh my god, really? Like I moved someone or I touched somebody somehow with something I found beautiful and something that I created out of nothing, right? Like it's really cool that way. So there's a store in Port Credit, Cess for Living, and they were like, oh, Amanda, you're one of our local artists. They're like, you know what, we can sell greeting cards or anything. Do you do stuff like that? I'm like, oh, I do. And so I've been going in there and resupplying my cards, and they've been selling them to the public, which is really nice. So it's another way to get your artwork out there if you're looking for different ways to show people that you're an artist and what you do. And I do have like my name and my website on the back of the card so that people can go online and find me.
How has your art practice changed from now to when you first started?
I think I paint more in layers. Like right now, I know the water is not green, but there is green to it with some of the seaweed and reflections. So I do layers on top, and I find it adds more depth and more value. So if it was like a sunset piece, I might paint the entire piece red, and then I layer colors on top, and it adds warmth, right? So I find that paint in light really adds to the substance and depth and draws people in.
And how has your self-talk about your art practice changed?
You know what? I think that's a good one. I used to probably say I was very negative, especially in high school. Like I wouldn't think I was that good. But now I'd say, oh yeah, I'm a painter or I'm an artist. Like I make that declaration just like saying I'm a runner and which is really good. But I love that there's people out there who are way better than me, because artwork, you're supposed to be learning and challenging yourself every day and getting better and better and creating something new. I would hate to be the best at anything because I feel that there's no room to grow then if you're the best. So I like to keep learning. I get tips from other artists. I'm like, oh, how did you do that? Or how did you make this?
I think I've heard the great masters comment that they were learning all the way through to the very end.
Yes,
Every
oh,
time
totally.
they picked up a brush or a pen.
Yeah. One of my favorites was Leonardo da Vinci. I studied his artwork in high school and I would recreate them. And I didn't paint back then. I was like too intimidated to actually like use acrylics or oils. So I would recreate his paintings with either pencil or Conte. And it was amazing. Or like pen and ink. And it's amazing all the detail and all the knowledge he had. Like he would just be like, oh, I want to learn more about this. So I'll study this piece and here like dissect things and take them apart and see how it works. And he was a genius on so many different levels. So I always say like never stop learning. If I don't learn something new a day, that's kind of like a day wasted, right? Like try to learn at least one new thing. It doesn't have to be big. It could just be one new fact.
So one question I like to ask all the artists is the 10-year question. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
I think if you were to ask people where do you see yourself in 5 years ago, people would be like, not at stay home, not during lockdown, not during. So to me, that question just makes me laugh now. But I would say in 10 years, I would love to be either making artwork my full-time job or like part-time, just get it and having more sales, getting out there more of my marketing. I've learned a ton of stuff, but I feel in those areas, that's what I have to improve. You got to find your markets. You have to know how to advertise for yourself. Or maybe have somebody do it for me. Wouldn't that be so nice if like you made so much money, like somebody else just handled selling it? Like that's the dream.
Do you have a specific goal in mind? Somewhere that you'd like one of your paintings to be hanging, or?
I would love to do some children's illustration. Yeah, I've illustrated on one children's book, and that was a couple years ago. It was called The Girl Who Lost Her Joy. And I teamed up with a teacher at my kid's school. She looks after special needs kids, and she writes a lot of books related to them. So this book had anxiety and depression, and her stories, like they'll give tips and how to deal with stuff like that. And she's like, oh, you're an artist? Can you illustrate for my book? And I was like, okay. So it was a really nice thing to do, and it was very different. And I learned a lot from doing that as well. And so I want to improve my digital skills too. So hopefully maybe sometime down the road, I could do digital artwork for children's illustrations, and I could do fine art, and that could be like my full-time job, or that could be, yeah. Because I think it would just be very fun to do. And then that way too, if there's another pandemic, you're set because you're staying at home doing your stuff, and it's good to have multiple incomes that way.
Well, this has been absolutely wonderful hanging out here with you today, Amanda.
Oh, thank you.
So I just want to say thanks so much for participating in this little project. I'm so grateful to artists like yourself who are willing to put themselves out there and talk about art in the art world and their journeys and share with others. It's just such a wonderful thing.
Thank you.